Have you heard of the Firefighters Analogy when it comes to discussing cholesterol and statins? Analogies can be dangerous if stretched too far, but this is one I think that we actually don't use completely enough. I'll talk about that next. Stay tuned. Before I talk about this specific analogy, let's talk about analogies in general. Analogies help us understand concepts. We often use them to simplify concepts or to transform them from something that's unfamiliar to something that's familiar. Analogies are not proof or evidence. We can't prove anything with an analogy. The analogy comes after a base concept has been presented. Analogies reflect what they're applied to. If the concept is false, if it's questionable, if it's valid, then a good analogy will reflect that. In fact, we may apply an analogy to a false concept in order to illustrate how ridiculous or absurd it is. I did that in the last video where I talked about the nocebo effect, and I made the analogy that saying somebody who has a nocebo effect isn't experiencing real adverse effects when they're really on the medication is like saying a hypochondriac can never get sick because they are imagining that they're sick all the time. They're never really sick, and that's just really ridiculous. Sometimes we use an analogy when the truth of the concept we're talking about is unknown, just so that we can at least understand what's being presented better. And no matter what, analogies are never perfect. It's almost a tautology. It's a by definition thing. An analogy is at best a slightly imperfect equivalence between two ideas, at best. Before I give the analogy, I have to first give the concept. I'm not going to prove it one way or another. I'm going to use the analogy to illustrate the concept with a full understanding that the analogy will only reflect the validity of the concept. And the concept is this, very simple. Cholesterol in blood vessels is the body's treatment for inflammation. In other words, inflammation is the enemy. Cholesterol is not the cause of the damage, it's the response to the damage. It's there to help repair the damage. So what's the analogy to this concept? Well, as it's usually presented, cholesterol is like firefighters who show up at the scene to put out the fires. If you were driving by a fire and saw all the emergency vehicles and people dealing with it, you wouldn't assume that they lit the fire, even though they're always there whenever you encounter a fire. Most importantly, you don't prevent the firefighters from getting to the fire. You wouldn't set up roadblocks at the end of the road and deny them access. The connection point between the analogy and the concept is this. Taking statins to lower cholesterol is like keeping the firefighters from the fire. And in most cases, whenever I've heard a speaker use this analogy, they'd make this point about the statins preventing the firefighters from getting the fire, and that's the end of it, and they move on to their next point. But I want to play with this analogy a little bit more. Consider this scenario. You're arriving home after a hard day at work and you see fire trucks in front of your house, a hose is leading into your living room, and there's smoke everywhere. Well, what's your emotional response to the firefighters? Are you happy that they're there? I'm not sure happy is quite the emotion that I would feel. Would you be grateful that they're there? Yeah, I'm grateful that they're there, but I'm not happy about it. My house is on fire and that's bad no matter how good the response is. So now let's consider this. If this scene played out every day at your house, should your response be to just continue with the gratitude? Maybe bake some cookies for the firefighters, have some snacks the next time they come over? Or would you try to figure out why your house is always on fire? I don't think I need to tell you the right answer to that one. This is how I think the analogy is actually underused. This analogy helps us to understand that maybe we shouldn't be asking, how can I reduce my cholesterol? And instead we should ask, how can I reduce my inflammation? And the way to do that is not from eliminating eggs like in this picture, though you might want to eliminate the bread, but maybe get the sugar out of your diet. What's the point? Well, if the concept is correct, then the analogy has helped guide our response by enhancing our understanding. But if we have low inflammation but high cholesterol, for example, my inflammatory markers such as hsCRP, which is high sensitivity C-reactive protein, indicate that I don't have an inflammation problem. Yet the current medical standards designed to get as many statin zombies as possible, my cholesterol is considered high. Is the concept wrong and therefore the analogy useless? Or is cholesterol coming around to the house to collect for charity? I know it sounds like I'm joking, but it's a serious topic. So maybe the concept itself is oversimplified. Do we trust our bodies, study the subject further? Well, that brings me to the topic of lipid quality, lipid panel quality versus lipid quantities. And that's the subject of the next video. If you appreciate this content, please like and share and comment on topics that you'd like me to cover. And if you haven't seen this video, I recommend that you take a look at it next. Thanks for listening.